we were looking at a letter. This was a letter that's really written 25 years later in the 1790s. And I thought that it might be interesting to sort of see, is the tenor different, is the language different. And this is from the rabbi, from the people of Minsk. And it sounds like it's not a letter to another city, but rather a kind of response to a letter from Vilna, basically, taking up the gauntlet and saying, we're going to do something about the Chasidim here. So it's very funny. There's a story. I don't think I told it to you. There's this. I mentioned it in my drasha on Shabbos. There's a story about one of the very early Satmar Rebbes, and that he said he was a reincarnation of somebody at the time of Korach, and that when Korach and Moshe were arguing, that it wasn't clear that Moshe was so much greater than Korach, and that he didn't know who was right, and so he hid in his tent because he didn't want to take sides. And so there was a Satmar guy in Shul, and I asked him, I said, do you know the story? He said, yeah, it's very, very well-known story. And he said, and I was trying to find the original source for it. He didn't know, but he said, in Satmar, there's a tradition of getting involved in machlokas, getting involved in when there's, I guess, arguments in the Jewish community, because as a tikkun, as a fixing for the Yismach Moshe, that was this rabbi, that he didn't get involved. He should have gotten involved, on Moshe's side, but he didn't get involved because so he just hid. And so apparently the Satmar response for it, is not. I would have thought maybe it would have been to avoid machlokas. Maybe that's what we learned from it, but they said it's the opposite, to get involved in when there's a butting of horns in the Jewish world. So anyway. So that's just coming up because it's obviously Satmar wasn't around yet. It was time very, very early, but Yismach Moshe lived very early. He did live at this time. But it brings up, on the one hand, you sort of say to yourself, like, what is all this argument, among Jews? It's not like any of these are, not religious Jews. They're all, these are all Jews who are very committed to Judaism. Why should there be such machlokas that they're using such harsh language and put each other in stocks, and some of the language is even murderous. Okay. In this letter from the rabbis of Minsk, they cite this rumor that the Vilna Gaon actually was not against the Chasidim, and that his signature was forged. That was what some were saying. So the rabbis of Minsk say, we wrote back to the Vilna Gaon to another letter to confirm. And the Gaon, we just got it to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and we're going to spread the word about what we've received from him. And it's actually signed by the Vilna Gaon. It's not that somebody says he gave permission, or he's he wants them to write the letter, but he actually signed it. When we read the second letter confirming all of this, Beidina Rabbah, and it also has the signature of the great Bezdin of Vilna, which everybody recognizes their signature. Bevinas Halev Bimaton Yikras Hagur Libo Yazur Gibor Chalatzav L'Kai Mitzvah Social Margona Chassid. So then we have to strengthen ourselves and gird ourselves to do the commandment, to follow the command of Hagon HaChassid, that's the Vilna Gaon. Shetzoik aleim kikruchya, he's crying out against the Chasidim. Mashein hapayachol hishal advar od. We can't. There's no more excuses. The way that he's heralding this war is obviously there's nothing to argue with. And when we got this letter, we are commanded to read it to everybody in every base Knesset and in every base medrash, every shul and every base medrash. According to the Gabbaim of the city, every shul has to read out loud this letter against Chasidim. So it's interesting, right? This 25 years later, nothing's changed. If anything, it's a reinvigoration of the war. And there were those that joined with the minyan. There must have been, I guess, a minyan in this town of Chasidim, and we have to stop them. Here it's a kind of a pun on a Talmudic idea that davar shebeminyan eino batal. If something has been decided by the Jewish people, the minyan in a great crowd, it's not nullified. It's a different kind of gzeirah decree. But here he's saying it's the opposite. Davar shebeminyan batal, that if something is part of that minyan, that Hasidic minyan, then we have to nullify. We announced it publicly, Baratzon Rabba Bezdin, with the approbation or the desire of Bezdin here, in order to, and anybody who violates the honor of the Vilna Gaon should be put in cherem. So that's interesting. In other words, part of the criticism of the Chasidim is that they're not listening to the Vilna Gaon. This broadside that we have written on Nir Hadavuk, which means paper with glue. I assume it means like I was thinking maybe it meant an envelope, but it must mean something you stick on a wall, sticky note. Or move Tachim Anachnu B'chol Tovsei HaTorah Morah B'Yisrael. We trust in all of the leaders of Israel. Mihem b'davar hamishpat kol yeter b'nei Ameinu asher lo hayu odayin b'chaburatam. Everybody who has not been involved with the Chasidim, shemena yiru b'chol yasu kamhem barem. We trust that everybody else will do what we are doing and spread the word against them in order to break them. They should spread out this cruise, this announcement in public. And we need to nullify, get rid of, and stop their minyanim. Naiki imahem viha funktin asher itanu in komnik with Hashem. We have to deal with them according to the funktin. Function, right? To do whatever we're supposed to do in order to avenge God. As it says that anybody who receives upon them the yoke of Torah, they will remove from him the yoke of derech eretz. Derech eretz usually means labor. Carry from the time that the Chasidim have been going on their own way, take for Aleinu tzaros v'ol derech eretz. There have been, this is interesting, they are blaming the Chasidim for bad things happening in the Jewish community. They're saying that from the time, I guess from the 1760s, 70s, that the Chasidim started to spread, the things have gotten worse for us as Jews, and we're having trouble making a living. Old derech eretz, the yoke of work, the yoke of derech eretz, of working in the world. Until we are so much so that we are like Uh, Kalina means like we're sort of destroyed or we're subsumed into the land. It sounds like maybe there's a drought, something, some kind of farming issue. Vada Yavo Bala Kerem Yichalet Kotsav. Definitely the master of the vineyard that refers to God will come and prune his vines. Now that we have, this is interesting. I mean, now that we have made a move, been over ourselves, we have inspired ourselves to fight against the Chasidim, God will follow. And then, that's going to make our life easier. There's a sort of mystical thing going on here. They're assuming that just because of the Chasidim, because the Chasidim have been allowed to multiply and exist, that it's the Jews being cursed for it in their town. Whoever is for God should follow us. God will give you blessing. You can't have mercy until we get rid of the evil and we get rid of the sinners. These are fighting words. Chol Avia Zaid says here, this is a Russian word. Machach, I guess, to rebuke. Manhila mitzavo al ha'arim asher svim kolanal le'atik bi'adam kolanal shekaro bo kol echad le'prachim poven le'esa. Everybody should read the letter. Makshina lehodia esyom asher kimu v'kiblu astivir gerzazos. And in fact, we should make known this day that we have received upon ourselves the command of this letter. God should help us. An arel nuvernater shalanu. So this note here says, we see from this word that they say here we should have strength from the anaro nuvernater. What is that? That they should give us the power and the permission to do what we need to do to the Chasidim. So what's the anaver? So he says, Nira mizeh, it appears from Yeshua Kvar Bezmanahu, that even at that time, beginning of 1796, Darshu HaMisnagdim Eis HaMemshala Litarev B'Rim Chasidim, that the Misnagdim asked the government to get involved in this vikuach, this struggle with the Chasidim. In Cain, Enisel the Davar Shirak Achari Musa Gra Chalul Shmo they HaChasidim Asum Misnagdim Ashasu. Some people say that it was only after the death of the Vilna Gaon that the Chasidim, the Misnagdim got the government involved. But apparently we see here that even in 1796, the Gaon is still alive. So this must, our Narel Nuvernater must be either the name or the position of a government official. I'll have to Google Nuvernater in that they should let us do what we need to do to them, that there shouldn't be any more like this among the Jewish people, and we shouldn't be like we have two Torahs. In other words, one Misnagdim, one Chasidim, one get rid of Chasidim. Rather, if we get rid of them, then we can all be unified. As it always was, one nation. And this is a very common idea that you may see this in Art Scroll a lot, this projection back that our Judaism today is how it always was, or Judaism that we, of a few years back that we idealized is how it always was. and this idea that there was never an argument among, that the Jewish people are always unified, it's a bit of a fantasy, I think. Not long, a couple hundred years before that. You have 100 years before this, you have Shabtai Tzvi that stirs up the entire Jewish world and divides it. Before that, you have the Karaites. When were there not, groups among the Jewish people that were struggling and separated? And we can stop this, and people will not sin by being connected to that group. We have to deal with them until the Mashiach comes in the following way. These are the functions or the practicalities that that have come from the people of the Kehillah of Novrsky. So they are taking a list of things that have been enacted in Novrsky. I guess that's an area here. It says Minsk, Molia, Vilna. I guess this is one big area. And I guess there was some kind of unified council of these Jewish communities of Minsk and Molia and Vilna. It sounds like the relationship with the government might have been on a regional level for all of these communities, and that is Novrsky. That's the regional council. And so we have all agreed to enact the following. Number one, Barosh Shalol they are not, and so what I want to do also is look at these and ask, is this different than the rules 25 years ago? They can't daven with the minyan. Never, not mincha or mar, not even mincha marv. Gam shali shanu and nesach shalanu and nesach sfar. They can't change the nesach to nesach sfar, which is what they did. Gam shalo yu nishchat shum davar nishchat bechalafim hamlutash. Remember, they were using these knives for shchita that were polished. I think the idea was they would become nicked less often, but that was not the custom, I guess, to use that. Chozman, number 4. Chozman she'avar aleim af echad merabotehem shelo yisa shum echad me'iro hin gadol o katan bali bolat mehamamuna shel ha'ir chayavo bolat shiachzer oto lahamamuna Lahavdia hadavar mamuna me'oir sheish barato kfi zaken. Here, this is a Russian word, hachok, the law. So anytime that one of their rabbis comes, nobody's allowed to come to travel from their city, whether somebody big or small, without permission. I guess there's some kind of travel that needed to be approved, I guess. And they're saying, I think, that their rabbis should not be allowed to come and travel around. Some of them are Magidim who would travel around among the Chasidim without permission. A little bit harder to understand. That I have not seen before. But obviously the Chasidim are growing, right? If there's traveling from one community to another.
Well, if the clergy of a town was sort of officially recognized by the government and in some way supported, then maybe they gave the power to the chief rabbi of the district or the town to say, anybody who comes to visit has to be approved by you. Anybody who's been elected.
It's something like that, because this seems legal. This seems like it has to do with the law getting involved. Yeah, that may be. And it's true that at this time, I mean, Russia, Lithuania, the governments were not separate from the communities. They definitely, there was a lot of power struggle utilizing governmental power. All right. Okay, so we'll do the rest of those letters.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good day.
You will.
Bye-bye.